must die young.
Hi, I'm Lance Nielsen.
I'm Dickon Tolson.
And we are
The Outcasts Creative London.
Hi, I'm Suzette and I help run the Outcasts Creative Birmingham branch.
We're here to talk to you about our new play, False Accounts, which tells the story of
The largest travesty of justice in the British legal system.
thousands of people were affected by the Horizon Post Office scandal, and we feel it's our duty to bring this story to light to a wider public.
We want to bring to you the truth, the real story of the impact of this travesty on people's lives. It affected people up and down the country.
It's the first collaboration between the Outcasts Creative London and
Birmingham.
And together we're doing production on the 19th to the 22nd of October at the Old Joint Stock Theatre, Birmingham, 7:30. Tickets are available now, selling fast.
And we're doing the 1st to the 5th of November in the Questors Theatre Ealing, London.
So if you want to find out more about the biggest miscarriage of justice in British history, told in the form of a black satire comedy, but in no way demeaning the seriousness of the subject involved, then do come along and check it out.
And come and join us and see some of the real stories behind some of the headlines. Thank you.
And here we are, myself, Lance Nielsen from the Outcast Creative London, and I've got with me the play's producer, Suzette Pluck, who also is stage manager and chief arse kicker on our production. It seems ages ago that we were performing in Birmingham, but it was in fact only last week.
Only a week ago.
And
Crazy.
we sold out the last couple of nights, had a couple of standing ovations, which was really nice. I can't remember the total number of Postmasters that came, but it was over 20, I think. They were, I think it's not unfair to say that they were resoundingly pleased with what we'd done. Is that a fair comment?
Yes, it is. Yes, it was quite a risk for us, but and they do not suffer falls.
No.
So to have their got such great feedback from them, it was emotional for them. But we had great feedback. That was great.
Yeah, we were extremely fortunate. I could tell, how difficult it was for someone to come. And we're extremely fortunate to have them come and not only watch the play and not run off in the interval, but stay and talk to us all after. I know there was one gentleman who came who he got as far as the theatre door, but he could, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he couldn't quite make it in and found it all too difficult, so he didn't get to see the play. I just want to say to him, thank you so much for coming down anyway.
Yes.
I believe he did buy a ticket. And listen, if you feel you can try again and you want to come to London, just let us know and we will have a complimentary ticket on the door for you. I think we do know your name. I just can't remember it. I think I know it, but I don't want to say the wrong name. So,
no.
And actually, maybe I shouldn't say who it was anyway.
Absolutely not.
That would be inappropriate. But so we've got a couple of guests today in lieu of London, which opens next week on Tuesday, 7:30. 1st of November. See, we were able to get this week because no one else wanted it because it's the week of Guy Fawkes and Halloween. So when they said this is the only week that's available, do you want it? We were like, yes, we'll have it. Thank you very much. We've still got tickets available for, I think, all of the performances. Saturday night is pretty close to selling out. So if you're thinking of coming on Saturday night, you should book that pretty soon. And
got the matinee added.
And we've added a matinee, 2:00. Yeah, matinee. The The space is very wheelchair user friendly. I know we've got a few members in the Outcasts that are in wheelchairs and such like and have mobility issues. The matinee would be a particularly good performance to come along in that instance. But anytime the access there is really good. We're on the ground floor. It's all really nice. The capacity of the venue is about 85 seats in the current seating configuration. The cast will be there every night to talk to people. So if any sub-postmasters come down, please make yourselves known. We'd love to talk to you. And, if any lawyers for the post office come down, enjoy the show. And don't forget to claim your ticket back on expenses. So we've got a couple of guests. We're going to bring them in one at a time. One of them is a former sub-postmaster, and I hate to use the word victim, but he was a victim of the Horizon post office scandal, travesty, and many other words I could think of. And that's former sub-postmaster Tim Brentnell. I think I've said that correctly. Let's bring in Tim. Hi, Tim, from sunny Wales.
Yeah, westest Wales, not particularly sunny.
Wales. Are you by the sea?
Yeah, about a stone's throw from the Irish Sea.
Beautiful.
So if we get the play on in Wales, can we have our after party at your house? Is that right? Because that sounds like it'd be quite scenic.
Yeah, sounds good. Maybe not in the winter months because it's quite rough, but it's lovely.
We are trying to get funding because the play's got no budget, and we are trying to get funding to get the play and take it further afield. There's plans to put it on in Scotland. There's plans to put it on in Wales, maybe the Southwest for a week of each. So we certainly will keep you posted on all of that. So Tim, our play opens with people talking about buying a post office in a village, and it's kind of like a village setting. And this is not a big spoiler for our play. And that pretty much embodies what you and your family did. Maybe just give us a quick short background to you taking on a post office and then when things went wrong.
Yeah, well, the village I grew up in, Roach, in Pembrokeshire, has and still has at the moment a village shop with a post office, a little chippy, a school, and a pub. So it's sort of idyllic rural life. But once you've sort of finished school, the opportunities for employment or opportunity are severely limited. So I found myself having to travel further and further away from home for work, just for work that could, allow me to pay the bills, pay the rent. So when the opportunity came up, the incumbent sub-postmaster and shop owner at the time, for various personal reasons, decided he was off to the other side of the country. We sort of got together with my parents and said, well, look, I've been saving with the view of hopefully getting a house one day, but let's pool our funds and take this opportunity, because at the time we thought it was going to be sort of a lifelong opportunity for me to build a successful business in the future. But also what I wanted to do was be able to stay in the community that I'd grown up in.
Yeah, perfect opportunity. Sounds like.
Yeah,
and it was. I mean, the first. That was 2005 we bought the business. I didn't have any problems with the post office until late 2008, beginning of 2009. So the first 3 or 4 years were brilliant, and I threw myself into the business. It went from strength to strength every year. We took it on and we're employing a couple of people part-time. I think in 2009 we were employing, although part-time, up to about 10 people. And then things dramatically went very wrong, and it went very downhill after that.
Can I just ask, in that period before suddenly there were, and I imagine we're talking big shortfalls and huge sums of money suddenly, not balancing and things, were there any minor things like a few £100 there or £100 there that you couldn't get to balance?
Yeah. From I had 3 days on-site training when I took it over, and the very first day, the office didn't balance, which worried me. But I was sort of reassured that no, they never. If you balance to zero every day, what you're doing is you're making yourself look like you're cooking the books almost. So don't expect it to ever balance perfectly.
So don't work too hard and look good, because you're going to look
don't get it right.
Yeah, don't get it. And Jesus, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. Can't imagine anybody wanting to do this as a job.
And as unfortunately, my mother always used to say that it would say on my headstone, "It'll be fine," because I was sort of so laid back. I was horrible, so it didn't concern me at all, because I thought, well, I'm not doing. It doesn't have to balance. They've said that I'm not doing anything wrong, so we won't worry about it.
Okay, yeah, and then
until one day it suddenly the first problem was £6,000, and you think, right, I have to worry about this because it's thousands of pounds,
and sort of up to the point where you were getting auditors in and things of that nature. What kind of total were you looking? What was the amount of money that was missing by that point?
Well,
or unaccounted for, shall we say?
Yeah,
it wasn't missing.
Yeah, it wasn't missing. £22,500.
Right.
Oh, goodness.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then again, forgive me for the short summation, but the bottom line is you found yourself in the situation because of your contract where you were liable for this money. You were advised to plead guilty to the lesser charge of false accounting, a line which is actually in our play more than once.
I had. They never actually threatened me with theft, because the auditor, when they left that day, because I'm so far out in West Wales, the investigators didn't get to me for a few days. The auditor sort of now underhandedly, I think, but said, I'll do you a favour when you get called for interview. If you go with a cheque for this money, then the theft charge is off the table because you've paid the money back. And at that point, I still thought I was fighting to save my office and save my job.
Right.
And so, when the auditors arrived that day, the initial feeling I had was it was a great thing, because I thought, right, now they're here and we can go through everything and get it sorted out and find out where this problem is and get to zero and be able to carry on. And it was after about half an hour, I sat down with them and I told them that they were going to find this hole. Their attitudes changed, and I suddenly realised, no, they're not here to help me. The way the questions turned, I was like, this is sounding like an interrogation rather than being helpful.
We can picture that scene more easily than you probably realise, and you'll understand when you see the play. I mean, did you know at any time up until before your court case, did you know that the auditors were incentivised to fail branches and incentivised by the amount of money that they could get out of you and things like that?
I didn't know that fact until you've just mentioned it.
Right. Well, that's covered in the play quite early on. In fact, I'm the person that's I'm playing an auditor in the play. Don't hate me.
No.
And
I
discuss
hope you've got a
it.
green pen.
Yeah. So well, we've got a couple of comments, by the way. Anne Hayward, who, by the way, is in the play and plays our narrator in the London cast. She's mentioning Nicola Arch there, who said,
I've met Nikki, a lovely lady, and it's. I mean, I'm sure as you know, these things all happen to us individually, and it's only when we started to get together and you'd hear other people say exactly the same thing and think, well, hang on, and not just the classic line of you're the only one that is having these problems, which I was told as well, but just the sort of the details of the story. And the way things were sort of handled, you suddenly think, well, hang on, this almost sounds like it went according to a script.
Right. And that was the idea. I'm going to bring in Carl Flinders, who's been waiting patiently now, and by way of introduction, Carl is the chief reporter at Computer Weekly, which was, I believe, was the first publication in the media to sort of first question the reliability of Horizon, effectively break the story, and he did that along with Rebecca Thompson, who's no longer working there, but is still involved in bringing things to light. So live from South London, here he is. And Carl would just like me to say that he has to get up occasionally because he's got a bit of a a painful leg at the moment. So if we suddenly see him go wandering off and strolling about in his flat, it's not because he's bored. He is actually
Evidence.
he's kind of on
yeah.
crutches and wearing fashionable ski boot type attire at the moment. Carl, thanks a lot for giving up your Friday night and, you know, not going dancing this evening. Much appreciated.
That's okay. No problem.
Just to explain to us how it was that the story first came to your attention. You started working at Computer Weekly when?
Could I initially say that the first one story that we did, I wasn't directly involved. Rebecca did that. Some other people were, but I'll tell the story. So I wasn't directly involved in the first story. So, the first contact between Alan Bates, who I'm sure needs no introduction, and Computer Weekly was 2004.
Okay.
When he wrote a letter to a journalist called Tony Collins.
Yeah.
He's very
familiar.
Quite well-known investigative journalist. He worked on revealing the Mulligan Tyre, the crash of the Chinook. He was involved in finding out it was a software defect, so he's quite well-known. So Alan got in touch with him. Then it was 2008, I think, when Lee Castleton also got in touch with him, and he thought, oh, wait, you know, I don't know what happened in between because I didn't join till 2007. So Tony got that, and then I was deputy news editor at the time, and I was a reporter of the financial services. And he passed the story to Rebecca to get her to work on it. They managed to, I think Bill Goodwin was involved as well. He was the news editor. They managed to get 7 people who were suffering problems, including Joe Hamilton, who people know, Alan Bates, and Lee Castleton, told their stories, basically what happened. All the time the post office says, nope, nothing to do with the computer, load of rubbish, quite threatening, saying there's nothing wrong, you can't write this, it's not true anyway. So it took probably about a year before we had the confidence to publish, because I mean, we're a trade magazine, you know, we can't take on we if somebody took us to court, even if we're right, they could put us out of business. So then, sorry, I can't see anyone now. I can only see me.
That's all right. We just focused on you to make you look really big for a second. Gave me a chance to drink some water.
All right. So then, so basically, the story was written in 2009. There was a couple of stories after, like the forming of the Justice for Subpostmasters Alliance. But what that first story did was it told other people that people were having the same problem as them. I can't remember the lady's name, but in the court case in 2018, she came up to me and said, "Thank you very much, Computer Weekly." Somebody went into her shop and put down a copy and said, "You're not the only one." So they got together with Alan, built this, and Rebecca left 2010. And I just thought, you know, the story wasn't huge then because the Nationals just weren't really interested. Private Eye and Nick Wallace, Private Eye, not the Nationals. So I just started working on it. And I mean, as I was telling you earlier, up until 2018, it was, well, I'd say the first couple of years, it was just reporting what was happening, what the GFSA was doing, if there was any court cases. But at the bottom of every story, I would have an email saying, if you're affected by this, contact us. And people were contacting, saying, I've had that problem. And people who worked for the post office and people who worked for Fujitsu or IT experts were contacting us. First of all, IT experts, if you've seen the inquiry today, the post office and Fujitsu ICL are straight out saying, no complex IT system has no errors. Every system has errors. However, the post office was saying that this system didn't have errors. Obviously, we work for Computer Weekly. We know that all systems have errors. So that was like a giveaway. It's like they're hiding something. So we were picking away. I think then the 2013 was when Second Sight came on. Things picked up. More people contacted us. 2014, the MPs got involved. But 2015 was a really big year, I thought, well, for me, because first of all, the post office really threatened me, sent me a letter really threatening, which was quite worrying because, as I said, we're a trade publication and they could pretty easily, you know, beat us in court if they wanted to, even if they're wrong.
Sorry, what year was that? What
2015, 2015. I'll tell you how it happened.
2015.
2015. Second Sight had the second report was about to come out.
Yeah.
The post office, obviously, Ron Warmington and Ian Henderson are just brilliant. Yeah, so just amazing.
Yeah, they both feature in the play.
Yeah,
Ian Henderson is portrayed.
When I heard they were getting an independent company to review it, I thought it's going to be a stitch up. They're going to get someone they know to say there's nothing wrong, and I couldn't have been more wrong. So anyway, they were going to do the report. The post office knew that they were onto them, so they sacked them. So I wrote an article saying they've sacked them, which they had. And anyway, I got this letter. It's like basically saying, you know, we're taking this seriously. We're going to come after you if you keep writing about us. But it actually encouraged me to do more. And also that year is when there's something called the Dal-Mallington error, which was used in the court case. I worked with the Communications Workers Union, and we actually caught an error while it was happening.
Right.
And did it. And I managed to get a leaked email from IT support in the post office. This is 2015.
Right.
Basically admitting that there was an error that could cause unexplained losses.
Right.
And I had this email, and I was saying, but there's a story I could send you a link if you wanted. So this was the first time we actually had evidence that they know there's errors. Before that, we knew there were, but we couldn't prove it. And it was like, wait a minute, we know now. There's an error. I've got an email internal. You're admitting it. So I went to the boss and said, and they still denied it.
Yeah.
Said, oh well, we haven't that. There's no proof that caused any losses because she found the error. That was because the CW found the error, so she didn't lose any money. It was basically doubling up because she was in a remote office. She was remming, they call it remming stuff. It was adding it onto Horizon, but not on her account. So it was like doubling up every time she did it.
I've read all about that.
So that was a big year. And then it was that year when Alan got the go-ahead to go. That's when he went for the GLO.
Yeah.
And between 15 and 18 was building the GLO, and then obviously when it got to the GLO, that's when it just, from day one, it just exploded because everything was coming out in court. So it was like a hill. I mean, Alan was saying this to me. I was speaking to Alan recently. He said it was a hill. You know, up to 2018 was the top of the hill. Getting to that point was the hard part. From 2009, from Rebecca's first story, or even earlier, to 2018 was really like walking up a hill with a bag of bricks on your back.
It's a long time.
I was following the story all of that time, which I'll come back to. Can I just ask, before we go back over to Tim, Carl, can I just ask you this? Have you heard this, that in Horizon, fairly early on, from what I understand, was built a sub-program which would automatically, if there was an error in a branch, it would automatically reset Horizon, and the sub-program would delete the error logs, therefore giving the impression to the people at large. And this was a program built by Fujitsu, by the way, within the Horizon software, that would basically cover up error data so that it would make it look overall that Horizon was running more proficiently than it was. Now, this information has just come into our possession. Someone contacted us and said, do we know about this?
I've not heard.
I wondered whether you'd ever heard about that.
I've not heard of anything. The thing that I've heard nearest to that was about 2013. I was told about the remote access back then by somebody called Michael Rudkin. But we couldn't prove it, so we couldn't write it. We just couldn't prove it.
This isn't quite the same as remote access.
So I don't know. I don't know the nearest thing when they change it. I've not heard of that, but I'd be interested in you forwarding me the people.
We're trying to get an exact quote on it now. The interesting thing is, we spoke to Ian Henderson at Second Sight, and he came across the same piece of information just a couple of days ago. So that's two of us that have heard that.
I mean, obviously, we would get tips off like this all the time, and then we've got to stand it up. We've got to find that evidence.
Yeah, I mean, it came from a freelancer who was brought in to fix bugs within Horizon, quite a proficient guy. And because by this time it was a bit like moving deck chairs on the Titanic, as I understand it, and that there were more things that needed fixing than they had personnel or man hours for. So bringing in additional personnel to do fixes apparently over certain periods was quite common. And he came in and he uncovered it by accident that this sub program was there. It would be very interesting to see if that was true.
Should contact the inquiry as well, probably.
I've already suggested that they do exactly that.
Because everything's coming out. There's stuff coming out now that I just I can't believe how did they manage to keep it. I'm thinking now, all the years I was trying to get stuff, how could I not have got all this stuff? It's because it's only coming out because the courts are forcing it out. I mean, there's a lot of stories I didn't write because I couldn't stand them up. And I was chatting to Patrick Green, who was one of the barristers in the GLO. And I said to him, I was telling him what the things I knew in 2014, 13. And I said, I wish I'd just written it now. He says, no, he says, the post office would have gone for you and they'd got you. So but now I think, God, why didn't I write that? You know, but yeah, you have to be so careful. You just have to be so careful.
We had to legally check all the content of the play very carefully. Fortunately,
we've been so careful. That was the hardest part. And a lot of times you'd get a story and you'd actually, I mean, I'm a reporter. I love breaking stories. I love investigating, digging stuff up. But sometimes you just thought, wait a minute, it's better if this goes to a national or something, because we needed the nationals. We can take it so far, but then we needed the nationals, which is where Nick Wallace was brilliant, because he connected the story to the nationals, to the broadcast, that because we can take it so far, but everybody in the IT industry is talking about it, but the general public don't know about it. But yeah, sorry, I'm waffling a bit.
No, that's all right. It's all interesting stuff. Going back to Tim for a second. So, I mean, Tim, before you got to the stage where you were charged and all of that, I would imagine, like everybody else, you probably tried calling the helpline, didn't you? The helpline, sorry.
Yeah, I tried the helpline early on with not smaller, smaller discrepancies, if that makes sense. Sure. And on occasion, they would advise me to do things that ended up doubling the discrepancy.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because we mentioned that in the play.
Yeah. And then you'd say, well, hang on, this £1,000 problem is now a £2,000 problem. And the person would go, oh, that's fine. It'll just sort itself out. You know, or, you know, feed that figure back through your ATM account. And, you know, the clever people up the line will pick up where the problem is and issue a correction for you.
Right.
So it just, I mean,
so they not only were they useless, they actually did also double one of your shortfalls.
Yes, yeah, and I know that's happened to lots of people and lots of us.
Yeah, we've heard that.
You just gave up with it because you would have a problem, and it was almost like when you ring a call center for your washing machine that's broke. You speak to someone different every time, and that each person would either sound like they were reading from a script or give you or say, what on earth have you done that for? You shouldn't have done that. It's like, well, that's what the person told me to do yesterday. No, we don't fix it like that. You need to do this. And, you know, you just end up thinking, right, well, I'll have to sort this out myself, to the point where you can't.
We've got John Sullivan watching. Great stuff, everyone. What about Windy Miller today? I mean, yeah, I think it was Mark Miller who was on, and he was... I believe was contracted by the post office and was one of the chief sort of technical guys, would it be fair to say, who oversaw the initial kind of build of Horizon. And he told the board that it was very robust, a phrase we hear quite a lot, only weeks later to send them a letter highlighting a load of the issues that we've just talked about.
As a layman...
David Miller, thank you, Carl. David Miller.
As a layman, sort of in the IT world, watching the inquiry this week, some of it, or quite a lot of it, has sort of gone over my head. But what I've picked up on watching, because I've watched every session this week as well, is the amount of people that have been brought to the inquiry this week. You know, I know they're all sort of CEOs or department heads, but nearly every single one of them has said, well, that didn't come across my desk, when they're asked sort of quite an important question.
Yeah, or you might want to speak to so-and-so about that. That was more their department. A lot of that going on.
Yeah, and I would have hoped, and it's only my personal impression, but that they might have come to it with sort of a bit more contrition and empathy towards the problems that this system's caused, to us as people. There was one gentleman, I can't remember his name, and to be fair, maybe it was nerves, but he was sort of laughing and giggling at every question that he was asked, or several of them were sort of, you could see the point that was trying to be put to them, and you could see that it was a yes or a no answer that they needed to give, and they'd sort of almost like politicians skirt around it and say, well, they were asked if there were errors. Well, of course, a system of this size would have errors. No, just say yes. Just say yes, the system had errors. And it gets quite upset. So sometimes I had to sort of step out of the room for a little bit with it.
Yeah.
The
guy I saw today looked like he actually looked like he frozen.
Yeah, I remember that.
Did you see him?
Yeah,
he looked like he did this.
Like and I was
like he was on the computer.
Yeah, I actually went to check at that I hadn't pressed the pause button, and he was
looking at the screen. I think he was looking at the screen.
Cornered.
I think he was thinking of what to say.
Yes, he was.
I mean, there's no way around it. I mean, the other guy the other day just kept saying he couldn't remember. I mean, but I mean, you caught red-handed. I mean, it's like I've worked for some big-ish companies, and everybody knows if something's going on like that. Everybody talks about it in the company as if they didn't know. I mean, what? You're working in IT, you know this is going on. It's like when Paula Venables used to say she didn't know about any of this, but we contacted them in 2009. They had their lawyers writing letters to us.
Wow.
They knew about it. I mean, she wasn't there in 2009, but the whole company knew about it.
She was working for the post office, though, before she became chairman of the board.
Oh, yeah, she was doing something
She worked at the post office before that. She was promoted from within.
It was Adam Crozier when we first got in touch with him as well. So,
I think,
I mean, they didn't. Everybody knows what's going on at a company. It's not that big, the post office, so everybody knew. I mean, I know they were ICL. Not ICL, they all know it's a big project for them. They're all talking about it. They're talking about lunchtime. They're talking about it in the breaks. It's.
What did you think? I mean, I'm still sort of my judgment on Sewin, who's chairing it, is kind of out at the moment, but he did kind of stop one of the lawyers for some of the 555 from asking a question a bit further, and I was a bit like, well, surely he should be allowed to ask this question, especially if it's one that's been put on behalf.
I know what you mean, but I thought Sewin knows what they're looking for, and he knew what they were looking for. He knew what they were digging for, and that's all. I think I'm not an expert on inquiries. It seems to me that they just have to make sure that Wynne Williams is aware of these things, and he'll look into them. It seemed to me that he would. I mean, I don't know. The first real court case I've covered in depth was the GLO, and I was just astonished by that Judge Fraser, the amount of information he went through, how much he knew, and just I felt like getting up on the chair and clapping sometimes, But yeah. So, and I think these judges are quite impressive. I mean, and he so far so good. He brought the compensation to the forefront and stuff.
Yeah, he's very thorough, and
they actually the inquiry invited me and about probably 10 other people were invited back to London just before this second round started, because Sir Wynne wanted to understand how we felt the public impact in sessions had gone, and how we were going to engage with it going forward, because he said he was very mindful of the fact that perhaps public inquiries in the past have dealt with the victims at the beginning, and then people kind of get pushed to the side or forgotten about when they get into the business or the nitty-gritty of going through details. And he was quite open to having us back between each phase, I think, to sort of keep on top of how we were feeling about it and the way or the direction that we felt it should go in. So I've got, that was I thought that was very good.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, I've sat through two public inquiries from start to end. One was the Marchioness inquiry, which lasted the best part of a year and a couple of months, and I was also on the Victoria Climbié inquiry, and that was over a year. And I did plays about both of those, and I was I was in every day, and it's amazing how similar the high up CEOs with the Marchioness, the people who were the chairmans of Ready Mix Concrete and all the rest of it. It's amazing how similar they look to the people that were on the stand the last couple of days. Everybody seems to look like Straker from UFO, if you can remember that television series. And then and they all wear the same kinds of suits, and they all have the same kinds of answers. We did a play about the Marchioness inquiry, which was on stage in 2001, and then we did it in lockdown live, and it's on the channel, so people can actually see that and check it out. You can see me wearing a ridiculous wig, but it is so similar. The excuses given are you might want to speak to that guy, and I've got more confidence in Sir Wynne than any of the other judges I've ever seen chair the previous inquiries that I've had the honour to kind of sit in on. But there's a long way to go yet. This is going to go on until 2023. Is that's accurate, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's sometime before we're going to see Venables on the stand, I believe. Do we know when that might be?
I'm not sure. She's so I can't remember. I knew, but I can't remember. But I met her once by accident. I was at an event in at City Hall. It was an IT event, and I didn't know. I just went to have a look at something else, and I saw that she was a speaker. And the PR guy was like, "Oh, Carl, is there anybody you'd like to speak to?" And I said, "All right, yeah." About what they're doing with IT. Obviously, he didn't realize that he didn't think about the Horizon thing. So I said, "Oh yeah." So he got me an interview. She didn't think about Computer Weekly either. People don't think about it. So she came in and she just sat down thinking I'm going to ask her about all these nice plans about IT, and then I just hit her with it, and she just said, "Oh no, this isn't fair. You can't ask me this now." I'm like, "But you're the CEO, Of course I can ask you, what's happening?" "Oh, it's really horrible what's happening, but there's nothing wrong with the IT system." But I mean, I didn't even get a story out of it. She didn't say anything.
She was still in that role when that happened.
Yeah, she was CEO then.
Yeah, I mean it
was a complete fluke that I got it, and the only reason I got it, if I'd said because I'm Computer Weekly, the PR didn't think I hope he probably got into real trouble for. Yeah. It was like a setup almost, but she just didn't say anything. She played the victim as if I was bullying her. I was like, what?
That's just and at the end of the day, you're being paid the big bucks for a reason. So you're a public servant. This is what I find really disturbing. So there's a question here which I'll put to you, Tim. Ignore the pig snouts for the moment. What are your thoughts on the National Federation of Subpostmasters? Did they do anything to help you? Did you ask them for help?
I wasn't a member initially. I didn't, being a young sort of carefree man, I thought I don't need to be a member of the union. Nothing. I won't need them. It's a waste of time. But also knowing the fact normally that when you're in a workplace, if you have a problem, you can go to the union whether you're a member or not. And some unions might say, "All right, we'll pay a year's subs, and you're in." I rang them after I'd had the auditors come in, and I'd had an HR interview about what had happened, and they said then that I was going to have an interview under caution with the investigators. And I thought, right, this is really serious. The only people that I can think to ring is the NFSB. So I gave them a ring, and I've heard at least one other person have exactly the same thing happen to them. When I rang them and explained what had happened, their attitude was, "Well, unfortunately, Tim, if you've been suspended, then you're no longer a sub-postmaster, and there's nothing we can do to help you. The best thing you can do is go and see a solicitor."
Jesus Christ!
Yeah, they did a similar thing to Lee Castleton, didn't they? Yeah,
similar thing. Yes, it was Lee that I've heard say it before. Yeah,
Mark Kelly's put a less polite comment about them, probably deserved. In fact, not probably, definitely deserved. I mean, yeah, what's the point of having a national federation of sub-postmasters if they don't actually represent the sub-postmasters, whether you're a member of their union or not? The implication is with a name like that, you would expect them to step in, but they've taken it as gratis by this point that there was nothing wrong with Horizon because you've told us there's nothing wrong with Horizon, therefore there isn't, and we're not going to investigate.
Yeah, there's that point as well that I can't remember who raised it, but they obviously at some point seem to take the view that if there was doubt cast on Horizon, then post offices would, as they have almost become now, completely worthless. So their members' interest was to support Horizon to protect people's investments, and the few of us that had problems were sort of thrown under the bus rather than rock the boat. Is how I understand it or feel about it.
Right. Yeah, that seems what point indeed, as Anne Hayward says, and you may hear her say that again on Saturday. Yeah. We've heard a lot of stories, none of them good, and that's interesting. And same with the helpline. In fact, one of the Outcast Creative used to be on frontline support for the helpline. Interestingly enough, and they gave up that job because it was too stressful. Another member of the Outcast Creative worked in the coding for Fujitsu, so we've also had quite a lot of information from them. And it's always good to get these first-hand accounts. So, I mean, in terms of, I guess a question for you both would be, because I hear this quite a lot. Do you feel certain individuals should go to prison for this? Because every other public inquiry I've ever been to that never happens in my experience. I mean, but this one is very different because of it was so much more blatant, the breaking of the law, in my opinion. Deliberate suppression of evidence, deliberately not investigating, and even then, when finding out people were innocent, still pursuing their worldly goods and chattels and criminal convictions and so on. So, I mean, Tim, you first. What's your thoughts on that? And if you want to name anyone, feel free to do so. If you don't have to.
I mean, at the moment, I mean, this week in the inquiry, it's all been Fujitsu, ICL, Pathway. Not just the CEO, everyone involved in those companies may have done a rubbish job or a lazy job or sort of worked to the minimum standard to achieve the goal of the project and ended up pushing a rubbish IT system kicking and screaming out the door. Those people, not those people, because that would be a contractual problem for me between the post office or the government and Fujitsu. It's the people in the post office who, as we see now and always suspected, knew there were problems, knew there were issues, but still pushed ahead and suppressed things, prosecuted us on this data that they knew was faulty and full of bugs. And then when we see things like the Clark advice coming out about the safety of prosecutions and their responsibility as prosecutors, and how the way that they've acted could very easily be understood to be as much as perverting the course of justice. I mean, those advices came out in 2013, 2014. The post office should have been writing to all of us that had been convicted at that point, saying there is a problem. It was their duty at that point to write to us and say that your convictions are unsafe or we've had these problems, and they didn't. They sort of doubled down and went into this denial and just complete blackout on the subject until we got to the Bates case in 2018. I mean, I lived through that decade with such sort of 2 steps forward and 3 steps back almost, because when I joined the Justice for Subpostmasters, I'd seen, and it wasn't in Computer Weekly, unfortunately, Carl, but it was in a newsagent's trades magazine. Someone put it in front of us, me and my mother. There was a little sidebar of there's this group getting together. There was 25 at that point, sub-postmasters, who think there's been a problem with Horizon. And if you think you're affected, give this number a ring. And it was Alan Bates that I spoke to. That first time when I spoke to him, it probably would have been late 2010, maybe 2011. He said, "Oh yeah, there's 50, or your story fits in with everything that I'm hearing, and there's 50 of us now." And I think the first meeting, I missed the first few meetings because I'm so far out in West Wales. I'd sort of have email updates rather than drive all the way to Oxfordshire to. But the first village hall meeting I went to, I think there was 200 of us there, and you think, right, this is, see, that's when Second Sight had got involved and wanted to go and put things down on paper. But each time something happened, of course, then I saw Nick Wallace's stuff on the One Show, and kept abreast of things with Computer Weekly. And Computer Weekly was brilliant because you had something in print that you could show to people that either believed you or had doubted you, and say, no, look, this is what these people are talking about, what's happened to me. I haven't made it up. But we'd have highs like when they got Second Sight involved, and you think, right, we're going to get somewhere now, and people are starting to believe us. And then it drops away again, like when the post office shut them down, sacked them, and didn't publish their second report. And you think, well, we're not going to get anywhere. Even after the Bates trial, when we had to settle, and you think, well, we're getting somewhere now. And then you have a letter telling you how much of the share you're getting, and it doesn't even cover the money that you had to pay back to avoid a theft charge. So you had these great highs and lows going through, but it's really the people at the post office, the investigation team, who, when I was prosecuted, they were prosecuting 50 people a year, and they told me I'm first having problems. No, they knew that there wasn't 50 investigators who said that line once each. They must have said it to multiple people, so they knew they were operating, in a very murky sort of area already before it had even got to the conviction stage.
Well, as we talked before, they were incentivized to do that. Sorry, Suzette.
No, I was just wondering, is that part of the inquiry that so many people were told you're the only one? Will that be used against them?
Well, I think the whole phase on investigations.
So. I mean, I hope that some of the auditors themselves are going to be, legally brought to be on the stand.
Well, yeah, I mean, the term auditors is used very loosely as well, because, I mean, from my experience, they just come and print out a balance sheet and compare it to there was no auditing or investigation or sort of digging into anything done. They just sort of compare the two figures and say, well, where's our money?
Yeah, and they, I mean, if they're incentivized to, buy branches that they close or find at full, why would they? Do any investigation?
Yeah, you could almost imagine them saying, "Look, I'm hungry. I want to go for lunch. Let's just do this quickly."
Yeah,
they just didn't care. They just they knew they could do it. They knew they could just prosecute. They could do these. They had the power to prosecute. I mean, that's the whole thing about the post office having the power to prosecute. Yeah. It's just scandal, and the rules on IT evidence in court as well. That was another thing. But yeah, but on your thing about the punishments, I mean. It's really difficult because in white collar crime they often don't punish people, do they, that much? So let them get away with it. But if they want it not to happen again, they've got to sort of make an example of someone. So you can't do this. I don't care who you are, you can't do this.
I also think that the public mood about this kind of thing has radically changed from the days of the Marchioness inquiry, which was in 2001, for example. And this has affected people in a very different way. And there's groups of highly paid individual middle and upper class people who knew what was going on and still turned a blind eye. And I think somebody has to be called to account. That it might be that they might scapegoat one individual. Who knows? But as far as I'm concerned, Venables and Angela van der Bogaard need to go to prison, both of them, and not just them, but I could name others as well. But for Bogaard to come out and say, even after the convictions were quashed, that she still couldn't see any link between the 500 cases that had been brought up, whether that was it by Justice Fraser or I can't quite remember. But for her to say that is just, as far as I'm concerned, is just she's lost complete touch with reality.
Well, yeah, because she when I was sacked, I appealed it, and she and Angela van der Burgod heard my appeal face to face with me,
Right.
And I sort of sat down in a dark room in a mail centre in Swansea and went through my whole story with her, and was basically, and I'm not ashamed to say, basically begging for my job, saying, look, I haven't done anything dishonest. Something's wrong. We need to find out what it is. Please. This is going to ruin my whole life and the community. I want to run this post office for the community. So let's work at what's gone wrong. And she was sort of totally cold and just listened. Well, didn't even listen to me just heard me for an hour, and then said, "Well, you're under investigation, so no." And I said, "Well, what can we do?" Nothing. And she walked out. So I'd be quite happy to see and keeping abreast of the Bates trial. It was Angela, wasn't it, that hadn't even prepared her own witness statement because she didn't know what was in it. When she was questioned by the judge, she couldn't answer. She'd had someone else write it for her clearly and just signed it off. So like they have this. There seems to be this whole. I mean, we saw it a little bit this week in the inquiry. This is like I get a real feeling of like a board level sort of. They're detached from they operate in a different sphere to us perhaps, and they feel that like different rules apply, and they seem to have like that. Without, I don't mean that it's all men, but it's like a boys' club attitude where they'll fuck up something in. Oh, you've made a mess of the post office, John. Let's put you have a go at Sainsbury's or something. People move around.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Venables and Angela, like Venables went to Morrison's after the post office. Angela van der Burgod was involved with the Welsh football. How can these organisations take these people on?
Well, they did. I was calling the Welsh FA every other day asking them questions about it, and I think they'd never really. I think they were shocked by what was happening because I was calling them every day. How could you employ her? Could you give me a comment about this when she's left? Blah blah blah. And I think eventually they just thought because they got rid of it, and so did Thingy got rid of Venables as well. We were all ringing them and saying, So I think.
Yeah, but I mean, they should never have been taken over there in the first place.
They shouldn't be allowed. They shouldn't be allowed to have directorships or anything. That's a definite.
And how is it that Venables got given a CBE in 2019?
They're meaningless anyway, aren't they?
I mean, that just beggars belief. For
a woman that's a minister not to have given it back at this point, it just astounds me that.
Yeah,
back by that.
That's the arrogance and the being so comfortable in your status.
Yeah.
Don't have to.
Yeah.
She says, "How do these people sleep at night?" My answer to that question is probably very comfortable in their 5-bedroom Bedfordshire house.
They're all friends. They all know each other. They're all linked together. They're different.
And
that was actually our actress that plays Venables asking that question.
Yeah, funnily enough, and
in the Birmingham past.
It's so funny that so much of what both Tim and Carl are saying about these people is already in the show. Which is serendipitous, I guess. I mean, on that subject, let's talk about the play for a little bit. There it is in big block capital letters, which I clearly forgot to take the caps lock off. What questions have you guys got of us about the production and its germination, I suppose? And also that goes to the people in the chat as well. We've got 14 people watching. Thank you very much for that. Do spread the word and the link. And of course, this will stay on the channel as well. Sorry, Carl, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just trying to sort of imagine how you set it and stuff, because I'm not going to be able to see it. I'm just trying to imagine how you do it. I mean, I quite like a dark comedy and stuff, but I'm trying to think how you. I just can't.
It wasn't originally.
You'll never be able to imagine what he's done.
It wasn't originally a sort of dark satire. Originally, it was a straight play. It sort of had 3 germinations. Originally, it was a 2-hander with 2 women. One was based on Seema Misra's story. That was the story that got me in, because she was the dead ringer for my old postmaster up the road. So when I saw her story, I thought she was my old postmaster, and I was like, this can't be right. And that lady can't have stolen this money. And then I realized it wasn't her. But then I got interested in the story because having done the Victoria Climbier inquiry, there was a very similar thing going on with the press that they did with Lisa Arthurworry, who was the social worker who was taking Victoria's case when she died. And then she was kind of, her picture was plastered everywhere, and she was very much scapegoated at the beginning for the failings of the whole agency. I felt that something similar was happening with the press. I got a good nose for that kind of thing. I thought this seems wrong to me. So there was a two-hander about an innocent woman in prison, one based on her, and then another woman who may or may not have been guilty of a different crime, and that was it. That play I wrote a couple of scenes for, and then it didn't get very far because then my parents both passed away and life happened and things. When I came back to that play, was around the time that Panorama debuted, and then I really started digging, and I found all these other stories, and I thought, okay, this is going to be the post office monologues, and it was 6 postmasters, 3 that were on stage at any one time, and they kind of rotated in and out. And then after that, I kind of realized more information was just coming out all the time. And I thought, we're really letting the bad guys off here. We're not holding anyone to account in the play. We're just telling the horror stories that these people have been through. And I also wasn't sure that was the best way to educate the audience. I kind of realized this is really powerful and it's very moving, but I don't want people to come and watch a play and then as soon as they leave the theatre want to forget about it as soon as possible because it was so harrowing. And I just didn't think that was going to serve you guys well. But fortunately, the National Federation of Subpostmasters saved us, because once I found out all about them, I thought, well, this scene would be quite funny if they were all pigs on stage and enjoying a massive sort of sumptuous meal at their annual retreat. And so I wrote that scene, and after that it was like, oh yeah, this is going to work, and it changed the whole dynamic of the play, and then I sort of came up with various other ideas, and then of course somebody sent me unredacted minutes of all the Operation Sparrow meetings, which was very kind of them. So that all of that information was quite interesting, to say the least. There's our good public servants spending our public money, creating a committee deliberately designed to derail the mediation process, to derail Second Sight and protect the brand and all of that.
So when did you start working on it? What year?
In its current form, 2019, because we were going to perform it in 2020.
But originally, when you first got onto the story, when was that?
Oh no, I first started writing the two-hander in 2009.
Oh wow!
So I've been following it pretty early on. Yeah. Well, when I first read about Seema's case, that straight away I thought, this is something I want to do, and then it just kept changing germinations. And I also thought, kind of by now, my career would be of a level of prestige where I could command money for proper budgets, and we'd be on at the National and that kind of thing. But nope. So but if I want to do a play, I find a way, and if it wasn't for the likes of Suzette and Dickon and the other members of the Outcast who were willing to put in time and energy along with me, it would never have seen the light of day, because we just didn't have any other resources other than the commitment of the people involved. Not so much as a bean. We haven't had any sponsorship or anything. And that's been quite challenging. But we kind of incorporated that into the new script, and it worked really well in the sense that, kind of Horizon didn't have the right budget and was pushed out too quickly. We kind of take that and flip it on its head right at the beginning of the play. Obviously, Carl, you might not get to see it, but I don't want to spoil it for Tim because he's coming on Saturday. And I know the cast all look forward to meeting you, Tim, as well. But yeah, so but it was always a risk. I've never done comedy in a play where I'm taking on a subject that's this serious before. I did a play about Hillsborough. It was completely straight. Victoria Climbier and Marchioness were reconstructions of the public inquiry. So again, they were very dry pieces. And this was a real risk. And, you know, if the Postmasters had come and not given us their blessing, I would have been dismayed. But my gut, once I heard it read out loud for the first time, I thought, yeah, this is going to work. And
it's not at the expense of the Subpostmasters.
No,
it's a very serious tone in regards to their pieces, and the humour and the fun that we have within the satire is for the Subpostmasters who are sitting in the audience. So it's quite a cathartic experience, is what we've realised when they've come out. They were very surprised. I think they came there ready to, let's see what they've got, see what they know about my story, that kind of energy. But Lance has written it so it hits the beats. You will recognise yourself, and you'll also throw your head back and laugh in a cathartic way at the satire without giving anything away.
I mean, plus also we get to call out some people in ways and that you can't really.
Yeah.
You know, mentioning no names, but somebody gets called the C word quite a lot in our play.
And it's not me.
And no, that's not including backstage, and deservedly so, and that's putting it politely. I mean, some people, in fact, I think the only complaint I've had from a Postmaster was that we gave one person in particular too much time on stage because they hate them so much. And I said, yeah, but entirely at their expense though. And they were like, well, yeah, but I hate them. Don't want to see too much. You know, so it's yeah, but we get it that it's not easy for them to come and watch it, and but no one that has from that camp has shown us anything but love and you know, camaraderie, and that's been very, very rewarding for the actors. We had one Postmaster come in on the first night, but on the second night we had like 10, including I think it was Tracy Fausted was there, wasn't she? And Janet Skinner, and these were all people that I'd read about, and you know, we all couldn't wait to kind of give them a big hug afterwards, and that's what happened. But Ian Henderson was there as well. So Ian Henderson came and asked if we could have a younger and better looking actor playing him in London. So we've got Dickon playing him now.
What about Ron? Have you met Ron?
I haven't actually. No, Ron is mentioned in the play, but we couldn't portray them both because it, you know, there's a lot of people we wanted. I actually, funnily enough, when the play in the original, our narrator in my early draft was Rebecca Thompson, and then that wasn't working quite. It didn't quite work in the way that I wanted it to. So she's mentioned in the play, but she's not in it now. And so the narrator is somebody else. They're still relevant to the story, but they're not Rebecca Thompson. But all the people that have kind of been the main flag wavers of this story, that have championed the cause. Computer Weekly gets name checked, I think, 3 times in the play. So does Nick Wallace. Nick gets at least one.
That's supposed to be a way of getting some coverage in Copy Weekly. If I get the editor to do something in his editorial, saying that there's a player and we're mentioned, maybe I could get him to contact you actually, because he did mention it today. He mentioned it today because he said, "Oh, this is on tonight. Somebody from Computer Weekly apparently is there." So I wonder who it is. I said, "Oh yeah," I said, "Yeah, I'm doing it." He thought he wasn't sure because I didn't tell him. I was hoping he would watch it.
Well, hello. Anyway, so I mean, it's, you know, I mean, we've and I was perfectly willing when I research something. I'm pretty thorough, and I don't put anything in a piece if I, can't fact check. I'm like a journalist. It's got to come from two sources. It's like the new piece of stuff we've just found out. I wasn't sure whether to give it any credibility until Ian Henderson said, "I've just had this piece of information 2 days ago," and I was like, right, okay, so it's not someone blowing wind at us, and it doesn't surprise me that came across. What else would you guys like to ask? Sorry, that was a really long rambling answer there. For a change, eh?
Yeah.
I was thinking, have you had people there at the play who didn't know about the scandal before, or is everybody who's been known about it?
People know very little, and they think it's over.
Yeah.
So they've heard about it years ago and thought it was, that was something that's been sorted. They're gobsmacked when they come to see the play. One friend, I knew that it would impact her deeply, and I waited for her at the interval because I just knew that she knew some of it. A lot of people know some of it, and they all think it's done and dusted. They're absolutely gobsmacked when they realise there's an inquiry still going on. People are still waiting to be compensated, have convictions overturned. And the state that the country's in as it is, people want to know more because the risk is real for everybody. So they've been absolutely gobsmacked. And the reviews we've been getting have been blowing us away because they've been very honest about that. And then they've taken up they feel like they've taken up the battle as well, just by talking about it, just by putting it out there for the sub-postmasters and their families and everyone that's been affected. It's done so much more than we hoped for because of that, and because of people wanting to garner new information after as well, and look into the inquiry and read up on it. So, yeah, a lot of people didn't know a lot about it.
I mean, yeah, it has the potential to be an even bigger scandal than it is as well. I mean, I think we're up to 82 people now that have had their convictions quashed, but there were 700 people prosecuted. Now, some of those people will, and I know it has already happened where they said, "Fair enough, I was a bad apple," but not. There's not another. There's not 600 of those waiting. Lots of people that have been written to or things have just simply ignored it because they see something with the post office on it and they just go straight into the bin. There's people that have died, people that people the CCRC and stuff haven't been able to make contact with. There should be a much bigger effort on that half to try and find these people, because I almost, through personal circumstances, missed the chance to have my conviction quashed because after the GLO action, I thought, well, we're not ever going to get anywhere with this. They've given us like a paltry sum of a little bit of go away and be happy with that, and we're never going to sort of get put right or have things. And I'd missed lots of correspondence. My partner was quite ill, so I was focusing on that and had missed quite a lot of correspondence about convictions and things. It's only when I'd seen news that the 39 were going through that I made contact with Alan again, who put me in touch with Hudgels, who sorted it all out for me. But there's just there's hundreds of people out there who are living or have lived with convictions that weren't right, and it could expand much further than this.
Suzette, would you just cover for a sec while I dash to the bathroom, and maybe we could hear, thank you, Suzette. Maybe we could hear from Tim what Alan Bates has said about the play, or if indeed he's said anything. Good time for me to pop.
He really has gone. That's sweet.
He has gone. Yeah, no, I haven't spoken to Alan for a while, so I can't say what he said. But Alan's one of those people that I'll take this opportunity now to. I mean, to me, there's sort of major players involved in this going back over the 20 years for Alan, who was sort of, without Alan being the character that he is, we would never have got the JFSA together, and someone who is as wonderfully strange as Alan, and I mean that in the best possible way, so dogged and determined, and wouldn't take the answers that were given to him and kept fighting for us. There was then, of course, the Computer Weekly, who kept running stories, Nick, who kept putting stories out, and then almost like we lucked into things almost. I think like when the Post Office were made to bring in independent investigators, it almost feels, looking back now, that perhaps they brought in Ron and Ian at Second Sight because they were such a small operation. They thought maybe they could control them or lead them down a path to sort of the findings that the Post Office wanted them to find. And all credit to Ron. I haven't met Ian, but I've spent some time with Ron because we share a mutual love of cars and engines and things like that. And just their pure honesty and sort of determinedness to get to the truth rather above all else. We, as a group, we really, though it's taken a long time to get all, and I know there's much more for them to come out from them in the inquiry when they're called. We were really, and the same with Judge Fraser. We really looked into a judge that understood how the computers and the technical aspect of it worked, because we could have had a judge that had no IT sort of understanding and would have just taken it as sort of the David and Goliath fight that it seemed to be, and very easily come down on the side of the big business.
I'll ask Alan. I speak to Alan quite a lot, so I'll ask him what he thinks of the play if you want.
Well, I wrote to him a long time ago when I first started writing the latest incarnation of the piece, because the others didn't get far enough for me to and I didn't even know about him actually when I first was writing the earlier version. But I wasn't confident that he'd got the message, because it was one of those things where you had to fill out the form online and then press send. And I know that they're not 100% reliable. I never heard anything. And then as we were getting into prep, I thought, well, I really should write to him again. So I actually got his email from somebody who will remain nameless, and wrote to him directly and just said, look, this is what we're doing. This is kind of our take on it. We would love you to come and see it. And please let everyone know it's happening, because, we don't want them to suddenly hear about it out of the blue. But by then, I think we were already talking to Nick Wallace, and I think, and we'd already started posting about it on Twitter, and so the cat was probably well out the bag anyway, because we announced we were going to do our next play about the scandal in, I think we announced it at the end of 2019, and then we quickly retracted that announcement when COVID started happening. Then we thought, well, we can't, because we wanted to do it on stage, and if we'd still been in lockdown, we would have done it online. We would have done an online version of it, because we did do that with three other things. But Alan's quite an elusive character in many respects.
He's the center of a huge network, and he's involved with everything. I mean, a lot of the stories you see that newspapers do, I mean, he's helping people do. He's finding people. He's talking to lawyers. He's talking to like Richard Rolls. I think he was one who Richard Rolls approached him. I mean, he's busy all the time, and he's so focused. He just, I mean, you call him, and he's good sense of humor, always laughing, joking, but you think, right, he's just been doing this non-stop all them years, and he's never given up. And I mean, there was, when he said he wasn't going to get involved with the inquiry until they sorted out the compensation, and people say, he should get involved, it's bad, but actually he played a blinder, because if they want information, he has to give it to them. And also, he basically made them look into the compensation. Because, I mean, he deserves all the plaudits. He really, he's basically like a machine.
We do kind of name check him in the play. I won't say how exactly, but there's a Postmaster character who clearly is, I would say 90% based on Alan. He's, of all the Postmasters we've got in the play, that's the one character where there's a very clear single influence. Because
the first thing he said to me after they won the court case, I went over to him for a comment. The first thing he said, I want a public inquiry now.
Right.
First thing he said.
Laser beam focus.
Well, and he got one.
Yeah.
I mean, so far for me, the most rewarding moment was on the second night, and actually the guy William, what's William's surname?
Hayes.
William Hayes, who plays Postmaster 5, who's the leader of our Rebel Alliance in our play. Fantastic actor. He was very upset with himself on the second night because he felt he didn't do as well as he had done previously, and he I think he lost a couple of lines somewhere, and it threw him, and he has a lot of big speeches, and he wasn't very happy. So we had a whole load of Postmasters in, and he shot off. And one of the speeches that he has is about the late Julian Wilson, who Tim may or may not have met at some stage, who was a fairly active member of the 555. He passed away from cancer just before you guys started taking him to court. So there's a speech about Julian Wilson in the play, and I didn't know Julian personally, but I've seen a photograph of him, and I got everything for that speech I got from that picture. So Ian Henderson, I was introduced to Ian Henderson in person. I'd spoken to Ian on the phone many times, but I was introduced to him in person, and he said, "Lance, before she goes, that's Julian Wilson's widow over there. You might want to speak to her." And I was like, "Oh, shit, okay." So, and it was this very small, quite fragile looking woman, understandably, after coming to watch our play. You know, I was, Mrs. Wilson, very nice to meet you, and so on and so on. And we had exchanged a few brief words, and I said, "Did I get Julian right?" And she said words to the effect of, "It's like you knew him. How did you write that?" And I said, "Well, just from a photograph." And then we were told that he was also massively into amateur dramatics, and actually was also a director, and had done some acting and things of this nature. Anyway, she gave me a huge hug and just said that we really did right by her. We really did right by her husband. When she said that to me, I just wanted to burst into tears, because you don't get many moments in your career where someone says something like that to you, and you can see how much it's personally meant to them, what you've put out there. And I'll tell you now, I could win an Oscar tomorrow, and that moment with I think her name's Karen, with Karen Wilson, would mean more to me for the rest of my life than the Oscar. The Oscar would help my career. I mean, I won't deny that. But
it's the same for the actors as well. It's been so intense. It's more than theatre. And so even backstage when they come off, we're all looking after each other. We keep it quite light, but the job is more than doing what they love, which is acting. There's so much more. And they'll come in. One night they came off and they were saying, "We don't know how to read the audience." And that's when we had the most Subpostmasters in.
Yeah.
And I said, "This is the first time they've ever seen anybody in front of them replaying what they've been through." I said, "So they most probably muted in utter shock that someone's doing this for them and hitting the beats the right way, and that's what you're going out there and doing." So I said, don't read it as they're going to come for you at the end of the show. I think they're blown away and overwhelmed as well. So just keep, but it's been quite an emotional experience, hasn't it, for everyone?
Yeah, I remember saying to them on the second night, because the atmosphere was completely different from the previous night. And I said to them, "Look, if we come back after the interval and half of them have gone, then we've got something to worry about. But I guarantee you there won't be a spare seat." And I'll come back on after the interval, and it's, they're all there. So Lainey just said, she's talking about Wendy Buffrey here. I was told by Wendy, she said this was the start of her being her again. And actually also Karen Wilson, I think, didn't she tell you, Suzette, that this was the first time she'd actually gone out socially since Julian had passed away?
Yeah, it's been a lot for her. You could see she was physically, visibly whacked by the play, but she'd done it, she'd made it through. And it's almost like she could take a deep breath again after all that she's been through. Very, very gently, but yeah, for her to get there and see it through.
So, as a writer, director, and an actor in any one of those functions, you know, the moments where you get to hear this kind of impact that you're having on people, and that it means this, and it's helping them as well. That's a privilege. That's an absolute privilege to be able to do that for these people. And we're such a small mouse, you know. We're a mouse roaring against the lion. As it were, to quote the play. But yeah, I don't know if I've done a lot of important issue-based pieces of work, but this one is hitting me on a completely different level. Maybe because it's so current, I think, is the reason.
Yeah, it's quite strange when you're just doing your job, and then people come up to you to thank you, and you think, well, you know, it's my job, you know, that's what I do. And no, it's not, but it is, you know. It's I love doing that sort of job, but it's probably the same for you. It's your job, but it's like people are thanking you for it. You think,
it'll feel more like that for us when we're getting paid, Carl.
Yeah,
we've all done this for nothing. There's no paycheck for anybody yet.
It's done for nothing.
Yeah. All of the cast are working on it for free.
Well, it's great you did it, because I've watched people over the years. I've been talking to people for so many years. As it's gone on, as things have come out, as they've been proved right, people have changed so much. At first, you know, it was very hard to talk to someone without just crying, quite understandably all the time. Now, some people are so confident. Jo Hamilton, for example, she was quite quiet in that shopkeeper. Now you see her outside court with a bag of files out of her hand, talking to the barristers, talking to the judge. She's studying law now. I mean, it's amazing.
Jo was wonderful. I mean, she came to the Court of Appeal when my case and the 10 or dozen so that were with me went through. I mean, she'd had her case quashed much earlier in the year, but she wanted to come, and I think she's been to many more since as well. She just wanted to come and support us, and totally off her own back to offer support and to be sort of a guiding hand, because she'd been, none of us had been to the sort of the imposing, intimidating Court of Appeal before, and it was lovely that she came to sort of even as far as just show us the way to the gallery and sit with us and show us where to get a cup of tea from. She was absolutely fantastic.
And the Lord, sorry, go on.
Yeah, as you touched on Carl, I've thanked, and as I started to do earlier, I mean, Nick Wallace and Ron and people the standard replies, well, I'm just doing my job, but it would have been much easier for anybody just to ignore it or move on to this. There's plenty of other stories or plenty of easier things or things with more of a public interest at the time. But they didn't. We needed people like you and everyone else involved that would sort of be like a dog with a bone and stick with it and stick with us. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, not much happened for a long time, but then when it started to come, it was like, you just can't. It is like a dog with a bone. It's like, wait a minute, this is like, and luckily, I mean, my bosses and that, they let me write as much as I want about it. I mean, it was an IT story at first. It's not an IT story now. It's not like most of our stories aren't about this sort of thing, but I'm not. I should be writing a lot more other stuff, put it that way, but I'm not. But people the whole Computer Weekly team really is bought into this. If I do a story, the sub-editors are straight on it, where even I ring them at night and say, look, I've just done a story. Can you put it up? Yeah, put it up. Everybody, it's the whole Computer Weekly team, It's like, really, it's the biggest story Computer Weekly's ever done. I mean, it's really is a huge story, and it will get bigger as well.
And that thanks obviously goes out to Lance and the Outcasts as well, because it's unbelievable that people have given up their time without pay for us. And I think back to, I mean, I've been told by people back in 2009, 2010, good friends that thankfully stuck by me have said, you were lower than the floor when it happened. And other people, I fought for years to try and convince people that I was innocent or I hadn't done it or there was a problem. And eventually I just gave up because people were trying. Well, you pled guilty. I wouldn't plead guilty to something I hadn't done. I used to try and say, well, unless you've stood up in a Crown Court where you're faced with the very real prospect of prison, should you try and fight it, you take the sort of the strategic option to keep yourself out of a custodial sentence.
Yeah.
And unless you've been in that position, I don't think you could ever understand. And to be fair, I don't think I would understand unless I only understand because I've been there and been through it. And it was only when once we'd got the 2019 trial done that I felt comfortable talking about it again. But it's there have been some real strong people who've stood by us and believed us, and people who've been able to put their stories out there for the whole time as well. Who without them, I mean, this wouldn't happen. I don't think this would happen now because of social media and the internet. And people tend to have groups and forums and things where they talk about things. I mean, when it happened to me, I had absolutely. I mean, Carl, am I right? The first Rebecca story in Computer Weekly was 2009, was it?
Yeah.
Well, I had I hadn't seen that because I wasn't prosecuted until 2010. And you think, well, if I'd had an inkling, perhaps I might have stood and fought it a bit more or been a bit more insistent. But these days with Twitter and stuff, I'm sure something of this scale, people wouldn't get away with it now.
I mean, I can't believe that. We were chasing them from 2019, always going to them about this problem. They were still prosecuting people in 2013 and 14. So they must have thought they could still get away with it, even though a magazine is onto them and Nick Wallace is onto them. Private Eye. They must have still thought they could speak.
I mean, by that time, Nick Wallace had done stuff on the One Show about it, and they were still prosecuting people and denying that.
Private Eye had done something. We'd written a few stories, and they were still prosecuting. I mean,
that's
they rely on the compliance of people, though, and people to not say anything, or it's not affecting me, so they rely on that. But nowadays, that doesn't happen.
I mean, it's unbelievable. I think also we're going to hear a lot further on in the inquiry of, well, I relied on other people to advise me, and their advice to me was blah blah. And you're going to hear that a lot when it gets to the higher echelons of, the post office. And I don't think they can hide behind that excuse anymore.
That's what I hope, Lance, because that's what worried me. That the Venels and the Van der Bogards of the story will, I'm sure, turn around and say, well, I was assured.
Yeah.
But hang on, you've got hundreds of people, hundreds of your employee or agents or however you want to view the contractual relationship, telling you that there's a problem, and surely you should be not just relying on people telling you. That would be my answer to them. To have a backbone and dig.
You can go further than that, because you can say to them, well, yeah, but you can't just say you were relying on other people and they gave you this advice, so you followed it. You not only did that, but you also set up a secret committee within the organisation that you worked for. And the primary purpose of that committee was to derail the proceedings of the people that you hired to actually get to the bottom of the matter, who were honest, decent people. And because they didn't give you the answers that you wanted, you set up a committee to derail them and also derail the mediation process and keep stalling and just hope that the 555 ran out of money. That was the plan. And I don't see how they can get out of that, because they were all part of that committee. The minutes are out there in public domain now. And, people can find them if they know where to look. And, some of the stuff that's discussed in those meetings beggars belief. And these are public servants. That's what they forgot. They're public servants. And their job is to serve the public. And unfortunately, we didn't see a lot of that happening. I bet that seats in the inquiry space, which is pretty tiny anyway, you're not really allowed to go and sit in there, are you, unless you pre-book. When
they did assure us, that was a point that I raised when I went back a few weeks ago, that there are, not necessarily in this phase, because the people that have been there this week from ICL and Pathway, I had never heard of before. Although some of the things that they've said have been quite shocking and important.
Yeah,
I didn't have any drive to go and witness it. But when other people that are very, very well known or important, I mean, not just the Vennels and the Van der Bogart, if you will, but like when Ron from Second Sight is going to be called to give his, there's going to be a huge interest. But they assured us that the dispute resolution centre hasn't just got little rooms; it's got massive rooms as well. And people have to notify them with a week, I think, but they will. If there's 100 people that want to come in person, they assured us that they will find suitable, buildings or rooms to accommodate us.
That's why I like the online, because I can write the stories while I'm watching it. It's quite
well with your foot, Carl. I think that's a considerable advantage. Right now, I just put that thing that I highlighted up again from Pi. I assume this might be a member of the 555. They sent me a letter with intent to prosecute. This is as late as December of 2018, and that's at the same time that Justice Fraser was sitting, probably just before the judgment came out. I know that there was a particular point where they were told to stop prosecuting.
I thought 2015 this stopped, or 14. I thought,
but if they've got the letter, then that's interesting, and that should be presented to the inquiry. By the way, if you haven't sent it to them, then I strongly suggest you submit it. Laney is saying, can we all go en masse? Did you mean the population of London, or just...
No, to go to the inquiry.
Yeah, no, I mean, there are some days that I would certainly be interested in attending. Were you, Tim, were you involved at all in the ITV 4-part drama that's coming out? I think it's due to be released relatively soon.
No, I wasn't. I presume it was like a blanket email that lots of us on a list somewhere had, and I didn't. At that point, it was after the Bates trial, which was a low again because it felt like we weren't ever going to get anywhere. And it was the same sort of time when the appeals were starting to go through, and when my partner was ill, and I just didn't engage with things at that point.
Yeah. It's too much.
Yeah, they spoke to me. The ITV people spoke to me ages ago about asking me questions about just at the beginning about all the history. But I think Alan's involved with it, isn't he? So.
Yeah, that was my understanding.
I mean, it's a huge story. It's the biggest, as we all know, it's the biggest miscarriage of justice ever in this country. And something that you feel when you're involved like we are, that you feel like everyone should know. But as soon as you sort of take one step outside of it, lots of people have absolutely, as you said earlier, have absolutely no idea that this has gone on. Yeah. But I know Nick says that it'll be that drama which really sort of hammers it home, because people don't read the headlines on newspapers and things like they used to. So when it's been the front page of the Mail and things, it just gets the next day, it's gone. But
everything is transient. Very transient.
Did you see the Have I Got News for You when it was on? Because things like that really picked it up. Because it was that night Have I Got News was on for you, and Computer Weekly and we all mentioned. I actually was going out to the pub with a friend, with some of his friends who didn't know me. And they were just talking about the scandal around the table. And I thought, this is weird. They talked about the scandal. And Enrico, my friend, said, like, do you realise? And they explained my part in it. And they're like, what, really? And so I sat the whole night telling them. And the thing was, they were just like astonished, saying, what? Yeah. They didn't know about it until they saw it on Have I Got News for You. That's why it's so important. Things like what you're doing, this series, Have I Got News for You, it's got to get out, because you just need the public support. Then you can get proper justice.
Well, on that note, anything that you guys can do to support us in terms of PR for the show next week would be great, because we got very crippled by the fact that originally there was going to be a train strike on Thursday. So we had a whole load of ticket cancellations, and now there's no train strike. But there is still one planned for Saturday the 5th. And Saturday the 5th is still very busy, but we did have a few cancellations, and so of course there are some people who probably could only come on one or other of those days and are now not coming. And we've got a fairly decent amount of people coming already, but we could certainly have more. I'd like to see it sold out.
I know that one of the analyses in the issue, that we have a digital issue as well as online, is the story I wrote about the NFSA letting people down. So maybe the editor might put some in his editorial about it. If I could connect you to the editor, maybe.
Please do.
Because he did mention it.
We've got our get-in on Sunday, but Carl, I'll make sure that you've got Suzette's email and contact details, because she'll be slightly easier to get hold of than I will. Bearing in mind I'm not only co-directing the play, but I'm also in it as well, as is the other co-director who's playing Postmaster 3, Dickon, and we're in. Once we get there on Sunday, we're in until 9 o'clock Sunday. We're in very late, from very early on Monday till very late on Monday, and then we're in all day Tuesday until we go up. And that's all the time we're getting in the theatre space, just those 3 days. We've been rehearsing since July, but and you know, and we've had some cast changeovers as well. We had a cast member who had a collapsed lung in Birmingham on the Friday, and I had to have somebody.
We've had drama outside.
Yeah, we had to have somebody come and read his part with a script on stage. And at one point, somebody got a line wrong in one of the scenes with me. So we kind of went around the houses a bit, and he was thumbing through the script going, God, where are they? And we did one scene 3 times before we got ourselves out of that. And the postmasters watching, I didn't notice anything. I was like, oh, well, good. It was because it was during the interrogation scenes. It just seemed like we were being even more nasty than usual. But but yeah, it is a great, one of the things I'll say about our show is it's a great way of educating people on the subject. Because it really does give you a pretty good overview of the whole thing from start to finish. And we packed as much in there as we can. And we've actually cut 5 pages of the play since we started rehearsals. So there's some little bits and pieces that have gone. There was a scene with an area manager in originally in the play, for example, and that scene got cut completely just for the running time. But they do still get mentioned as being useless. But we just don't get to meet them. And we think we can only have so many useless people in the play, and there's plenty of them. But yeah, okay. So I think we've gone over time. Actually, it's 98 minutes now. So if anybody has any last pressing questions for our guests, chuck them in the chat now. And I do want to say, Carl, I hope you get well soon, because you clearly can't go skiing this weekend as planned.
7 weeks in the walking boot, and then 7 months rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Achilles tear. Yeah, it's pretty.
I hope you have a comfortable sofa. It's all I'm
the shape of my horse is imprinted in it.
comfortable
well,
sofa.
my wife keeps saying, but it's not true.
Keep moving.
Subscription to Netflix. Tim, looking forward to seeing you. Your Saturday, you're coming. Is that correct?
Yeah, Saturday evening, I'm coming. Yeah.
And for those people watching, we've got a matinee on Saturday at 2:00. We also have a little bit of a Q&A after that with Nick Wallace, who is also going to be there on Saturday. I think he's going to be around for both performances. I don't know whether he's going to be watching both, but he's definitely going to be around for both of them. A few comments just of thanks coming in for people. So that's from Lainey there. Clearly one of our biggest fans. I think she came to see the play in Birmingham.
It's Elaine.
Is that Elaine?
Actress. Oh, yeah. Yes. All this time. Sorry, Elaine. I thought he knew.
It's her name, the way it's put. I didn't recognise her. That's our lady who played Paula Venables in Birmingham.
That's Venables.
Mark Kelly, who I think is one of the 555. I believe.
I recognise. Yeah, Mark. I think he's from down. If it's the Mark Kelly that I've met, he's from down Swansea way. So
right, okay, and chat. Thanks very much. Don't forget, this is going to stay up on the channel. The best thing you can do to support the Outcast Creative is subscribe if you haven't done so already, because we're not monetized yet. We're still trying to get up to 1,000, and we're just creeping up to 800 now. So we've still got a ways to go. All the links for the play and everything, the Questors link are in the stuff down below. You can also follow me on Twitter under Lance Nilsson WD. And then there's also an Outcast Creative Facebook page. Oh, look, we've had Ian Henderson, like a submarine, has been watching us this whole time.
Hello.
Look at that. That's very sneaky, Ian. And it was lovely to meet Ian when he came to see the show, and nothing again but praise for us, which was really kind. And I'm glad he was happy. But we have given into your request, Ian, and we do have a slightly younger, taller actor playing you in London, so you're going to have to come and watch it again. So, guys, thank you so much for giving up your Friday night. Really appreciate it. You're both welcome to the Outcast Creative Christmas Party, if indeed Carl can get there, which is in December.
Where will that be?
That's in Highbury in Islington.
All right,
So,
yeah.
Victoria,
easy, yeah. I'm overground directly from Forest Hill to Highbury.
Oh, he's showing off now. I'm so jealous.
We'll be there.
Look out for us. I'll be pottering around the theatre, so I'll look out for you on Saturday, Tim and Carl, if you're coming to it as well.
It's our last night on Saturday, so I think the cast will do what we did in Birmingham. We'll remain on stage and we'll say a few thank yous.
Yeah.
And so one of Suzette's jobs will be to remind me to thank you, Tim, for both tonight and also coming. So I guess that's it from us. So guys, thanks very much for watching and tuning in. Like we said, please spread the word. Put this link up in your social media, but most importantly, tag the Questors Theatre at the Questors Theatre in anything you put up, and do put the link up to buy tickets. If you can come and support the play, great. If you can't, spread the word on your social media. That can be just as helpful. And we'll see you all again soon. Thank you so much for tuning in.